Welcome to the Learn Guitar podcast from the National Guitar Academy, the podcast that makes you a better guitarist. We're going to share some of our best guitar tips with you. We'll discuss chords and chord technique. We'll share some lead guitar secrets. We'll tell you how to sound more rhythmic and musical. And we're going to teach you some music theory. I'm your host, Mike Kennedy, and joining me today are Jack Taylor and Andy Hignett. So let's get started with our first segment, Lead Lines. Before we dive into the show, please let me just say up front that we really want your feedback on this show. We want to help you. Tell us what you want to hear. You can email us at podcast@nationalguitaracademy.com. We read every email and we'd love to get your feedback. Lead Lines is the part of the show when we discuss lead guitar techniques, scales, riffs, solos, and other secondary guitar techniques. Okay, Jack, this week we thought that we'd have a little quick chat about keys and how fundamental they are to a lead guitarist and all lead guitar technique in general. Kick us off, mate. Keys. Talk to me about keys. Why are they so important?
So they're really important for lead guitarists just because if you don't know what the key is, you don't know what scales you need to play, you don't know what chords you need to play. They just help inform you and help you sound good when you're playing lead guitar.
Great summary. Andy, from a lead guitar point of view, why is it so important for you to know a song's key? Also, just be thinking about keys in general.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, basically, the key will tell you what notes will work, and those are the ones you want to be playing. You want to play the ones that will work in the song.
Can you just repeat that again? Because
yeah.
that's the secret of lead guitar.
Yeah. Play notes that work, and don't play notes that don't work.
Yeah. You just said then, perfect description. The key will tell you what notes will work. And I think for years and years, I didn't realise that if you wanted to play lead guitar over, a certain part of music, I never knew what to play. And it was just it was always a bit fraught, really, because I was just like, I'll try this note, and just hope that it worked. But the sort of breakthrough, moment for me was, I don't know, it was literally years before I knew this, was that, if you want to know notes that will work over a key, you need to just play a scale that matches the key of the song. Yeah. So if a song is in the key of C major, you can play any note within the scale of C major and it'll sound okay.
Yeah.
And that was a big breakthrough for me. Yeah. It's like, people are like, oh yeah, it's a bit obvious, like, duh, but until somebody actually tells you that or you figure it out, you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so a quick example of that. I'm going to play some chords here in C major. Okay, now Jack's going to come in playing some notes from the scale of C major. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so and we know that they're going to sound, that they're going to work together because they're literally like, the key you're playing in perfectly matches the key that I'm playing in. So Jack, let's imagine that I'm listening to this podcast at home. I'm, relatively new guitarist. I want to get started with lead guitar, but I'm a bit intimidated by like those Guitar Hero types that you see shredding notes. Just break it down like really, really simple. If someone wants to get started with lead guitar, keys are they're the secret, aren't they, really, to understanding keys? What could they do? Give them some specific steps that they can follow.
So, like, one step you could follow is, like, to try and find out the key of a song. Maybe look at the first chord and the last chord, which will help you determine what key it is. So, for example, if the first chord is C major and the last chord is C major as well, there's a fairly high chance that your song is going to be in the key of C. And if it's C major, that means you can play a C major scale. So you've got a direct link there between the key of the song and the scale type which you're going to use.
Okay, so step one, if you want to play lead guitar over any piece of music, any song, step one is diagnose the key of the song. So that's like literally the absolute first thing you should be thinking is, what key is this song in? Now, we'll speak about that in just a sec, but step one is figure out what the key of the song is. Step two is then play in a scale that matches that key. So as Jack said, let's say, for example, a song was in the key of G, then if you play notes from the scale of G major, then that will work.
I was going to say as well, I think You can always just use pentatonic scales rather than full major or minor scales because they're a bit more forgiving.
Yes.
So if we do take the first chord of the song, even if it's not actually the key, if we match up the pentatonic with that, it will work. Even if it's not the key proper, it will still work.
Pentatonics, I think, they're more forgiving, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're more portable. You can move them around a bit more and get away with more.
Yeah. They're a bit easier to play physically as well. They don't have as many notes.
Oh yeah, way easier. Okay, so I hope that's helped, guys. It's just a really quick sort of introduction into getting started with lead guitar. Step number 1 is figure out the key of the song, and step number 2 is playing a scale that works with that key. And the easiest way to do that is to just match it exactly. So, right, super quick. Jack, let's say a song is in the key of A minor.
Mm-hmm.
What scale would you play?
Like A minor pentatonic.
Okay, so if the key were A minor, you will play in A minor.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, let's say that there were a track in D major, Andy. What key will work?
Well, I'd either use the D major scale or I might use a D major pentatonic scale.
Okay, and we know that they'll sound ace.
Yes.
Perfect, okay. And then just one last point to make on that, and we'll go into this stuff in detail. We'll go into this in much more detail in the future. But, if you want to lend something a bluesy edge, then you can play in a minor. So if the track were D major and you wanted to play in D minor, a D minor pentatonic, that would often work, but it would lend a bluesy edge that sometimes you don't want.
Yeah.
So generally, if you figure out the key of the song and it's D for argument's sake, then we know D major will work, but a D minor pentatonic could be fun to explore too.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so there we go. There's plenty for people to get started with there. Now, if you want help diagnosing keys and understanding what scales work with keys, then you'll find that in the bonus pack for this episode. For each podcast episode, we create a bonus pack that expands on what we've discussed in the episode. Each bonus pack includes video lessons, diagrams, chord boxes, practice materials, basically stuff that, expands on what we've discussed in the podcast. There's only so much we can do in audio form, and the bonus pack is basically your way of, getting access to our other material that helps with whatever the topic might be. So to download the bonus pack for this episode, go to nationalguitaracademy.com/podcast1. And now it's time for our next segment, Quick Chords.
Quick chords, quick chords.
Quick Chords is the part of the show when we discuss chords and chord technique. So Andy, you're going to share a cool chord with us this week.
Yeah. Okay, this chord is... That's a D major sus9.
Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, I love this chord because it has this complicated, impressive sounding name, but it's actually really easy to play.
Give us it again, mate. Let's hear it again. Really nice chord.
Yeah. It's got a nice jangly, sort of ethereal sound. Almost.
Really nice.
I think it sounds really nice to go to an E from there.
Really nice chord. Now, even though it's got a very long-winded name, it's actually very, very simple to play.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a chat about how to sort of elegantly describe chords in an audio format. It's obviously much easier to do some of this stuff in video because you can just show it. But what we thought would probably be the easiest way to do this would be to just spell the tab for the chord. So the tab for this particular chord is XXO220. Is that right? XXO220. That's the one.
That's correct.
To see the chord box for the chord that we've discussed here, check out the bonus pack for this episode, which you can get at nationalguitaracademy.com/podcast1. And now it's time for our next segment, Tips and Advice.
You've got a question, I've got some answers. You've got a question for you, I've got tips and advice.
Tips and Advice is the part of the show when we answer your questions about guitar and music culture. If you've got a question for us, please email us at podcast@nationalguitaracademy.com and we'll try our best to help you out. Okay, Jack, kick us off. We've got a couple of emails this week. We got hundreds of emails.
Yeah, it's loads, isn't it?
I wanted to just take a moment really just to say thank you to everybody. I asked for people to send us in questions and ideas for the podcast, and we were just snowed under with stuff. It was absolutely awesome. Thank you guys. So yeah, we're going to be working our way through them for months, I think. But yeah, Jack, we picked out a couple before we started, so take us away.
Cool, so this one's from Bob Chisnell. He says, "Hi Mike, one thing that could be helpful is how to play my guitar with other players and singers. I play and practice a lot with my drum machine, but have never played in front of anyone or with anyone. Thanks for including me in your mail. Love what you're doing." So thanks for that. Thanks for that, Bob.
Okay, brilliant question from Bob. Wow, I could talk about this one all day. Andy, what do you think? So what advice would you give to Bob?
Well, first you need to meet some new musicians. That would be a good start. A great place to do that would be things like open mic nights, jam nights. If you go along there and start mingling.
You've got to get out there, haven't you?
Yeah. The great thing about something like an open mic night is it's usually a fairly informal environment. So, it's great if you just want to get up and start jamming with people or get up and have a go. Or
Andy is the open mic king, by the way.
Yeah. So, usually the audience won't be too judgmental if you're a bit rusty or you're a bit new to it. If you haven't played live before, people are usually a bit understanding of that.
Yeah. It's quite intimidating, isn't it, for a lot of people, the idea of standing up and playing in front of other people. Yeah. But open mic nights are a good place to get started because, without being sort of cruel about it, the standard tends not to be that high. Yeah. There's always someone who's worse than you. So if you're worried about, publicly shaming yourself, it's like, dude, don't worry about it, Yeah.
Well, the thing is as well, if there's any problems with your performance, people will usually give you some positive feedback. Yeah. They're usually there for that. They'll come and tell you how they think you could improve. Whereas at a gig, they might not do that. They might just leave. Yeah.
But that's absolutely true. Yeah. I mean, the other thing to remember is that just to go, I guess going back to Bob's question there specifically, in my opinion, nothing improves you more than playing with other musicians, because you learn from them, but also you have to become much more flexible as a musician to react dynamically to whatever is happening. So, to me, the whole end goal of learning an instrument is to play with other people. But I know so many of our students are just like bedroom players, or they just play at home in the living room and they don't actually get out there. And I think most of that is because of fear. I think it's that people are they don't think they're good enough. Mm-hmm. But there are some terrible professional guitarists out there, so I don't think people need to feel bad about it. You just got to get out there and and get in touch with other people, But I think what you said before, Andy, about you've got to meet those other musicians. That's the starting point, isn't it? You've got to get out there. Yeah. Whether it's you're finding people online or locally, you put an advert in your local guitar shop. Where you go on Facebook, you go along to events. I think you have to be proactive about it. It's not going to just happen. You have to make it happen. You have to go out there and do it.
I think as a side note as well, if you don't really feel like you are ready for going out and playing live, take some videos of yourself and upload them to a social media platform like Facebook or Twitter, or another one that I've done recently is do Facebook live stream, because it's essentially like a mini gig and you don't really know who's going to click on live, and it's kind of like playing a gig in your bedroom. So that's a really great way of doing something and preparing yourself for the live environment.
Brilliant idea. Absolutely love that one. Okay, so I hope we've given you a few tips there, Bob, that that are sort of practical, that can help. I mean, I think overwhelmingly we all think it's a fantastic idea to get out there and play with other musicians. And I can't emphasize strongly enough how much better it makes you. So I think I don't necessarily think that's what a lot of guitarists go looking for when they play with other people. I think they go to sort of have fun and have that experience. I don't think people actually go to that, most of them, to become a better guitarist. But wow, it really does make you a much better one.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. So we got another question there, Jack. Take us on to the next question.
Yeah, so this next question is from Michaela Latova. She says, "Hi Mike, congrats on getting the podcast started. The one problem I have is getting from playing notes on the guitar to playing music. So how do you make the transfer over?"
Michaela, thank you so much for asking this question. This is something that I've been asked a lot of times over the years. I think first and foremost what we have to do is kind of define, because it's a little bit vague, isn't it? Michaela's email is how do I get from notes to music? So I think lots of people don't necessarily understand when they first start learning guitar, that if you, this is why I prefer people to be chord focused. So for me, every guitarist in the world should begin learning chords, and I don't believe people need to think about notes when they first start playing. I don't think it's important at all. I think it holds you back. I think chords are the best starting place for guitarists to begin. You learn in a more balanced way, and you become a better and more well-rounded guitarist if you begin with chords. So I guess, to answer Michaela's question directly, I would try and stop thinking about the guitar as notes and start thinking about it as chords, and start stitching some chords together, playing songs that you love. You guys both know my sort of whole teaching philosophy really is built around people playing music that they love. Not rubbish that they get given by the guitar teacher, like Happy Birthday or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's like pick songs that you personally love and play them.
I think the problem is like when I was in school anyway, like I started off learning like clarinet and saxophone and stuff like that, and none of those instruments can play chords. But when people think about music, they put guitar in this category and they think, oh, you must learn all the notes then, because that's what everyone else is doing. But 99% of the time in my own real world work as a guitarist, I've only had to play a handful of notes. Most of your works is chords. It's because you're one of the only instruments that can actually do it. So stick with chords and play music you love, and that's a great way to start off. And
yeah, I think it's a great point, Jack. Is that generally what I would say. Generally, there's no absolute rules in music, but in my experience from all the guitarists that I've seen, they tend to progress to more note-based stuff as they get more advanced. So I think to begin with, people want to be thinking about chords, and of course they want to start learning lead guitar and scales and stuff like that as they get better. I think what happens is, as you get more skill with the instrument, as you start understanding music theory a bit more, naturally your focus can become more note focused rather than chord focused. But that's definitely not something that I think a beginner guitarist needs to worry about. Andy, what do you think, mate? What advice would you give to Michaela?
Yeah, I agree as well. Chords are easier to play as well. To play a single note on a guitar, we have to be really careful with our picking hand. We have to be
accurate,
make sure. So if I want to play this note, I have to make sure I don't accidentally hit the other notes. Whereas with a chord, we can just get straight into it and play all the strings. So it's a little bit easier to do. And once we get a little bit more articulate with our hands, then we can start doing things like playing single notes and picking out melodies and so on.
So I think just to give Michaela some absolutely, specific step-by-step, things that she can follow. I think step number one is make a list of 5 songs that you absolutely love. So not tracks that you think are okay, or that, pick 5 songs that you absolutely adore. Step 2, go on the internet, go to Ultimate Guitar or somewhere, find out what the chords are for that track. So I don't know, let's say, for argument's sake, it's, I don't know, Sweet Child of Mine, by Guns N' Roses or something. You might just want to type Sweet Child of Mine chords into Google, and then, you'll find the tab for that on Ultimate Guitar probably. And then practice those chords with that track, and just, make sure it's music that the good thing about if it's music that you really love is that you'll enjoy your practice time, but also it's music that you know well. So that tends to really help with your timing. You don't want to be learning something brand new, a piece of music that you've never heard before. So I hope that gives you some specific tips there, Michaela, that you can follow to get started with that, because of course the aim is for you to be making music as quickly as possible. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section of the show now, which is rhythm section. Rhythm section is the part of the show when we discuss how to boost your rhythmic ability and make your guitar playing sound more musical. Now this week we're going to discuss very quickly just getting started with finger picking. Andy, what is finger picking?
Well, finger picking is one way we can play guitar. Rather than using a plectrum or a pick to strum the strings, rather than strumming them in one big block of notes, we can separate the notes out. Using all the fingers of the hand, or we can play more rhythmically like that, but using the fingers to pluck the strings rather than a pick.
It's giving us much more texture, isn't it?
Yeah.
So rather than kind of, as you said, like presenting chords in a block of notes, we're taking the time to articulate individual notes from within that chord. Jack, when you think about finger picking, when you explain it to your students, how do you sort of present it to them?
I kind of think of it as like it's a more delicate way to kind of approach guitar playing. It just gives you kind of more options. From a practical point of view, I always just think you can use your thumb, first finger, and your second finger. And if you're getting started, that's all you really need to use for the first kind of 6 months.
Yeah.
Once you've kind of done that, expand and using your third and your fourth as well.
So finger picking is probably, I mean, when I play sort of just at home, most of the time I'm finger picking, to be honest. Like, I didn't years ago, well, that wasn't the case, but now I tend to mostly I play without a pick, just because I like feeling that connection with the instrument, just playing with my fingers. But I definitely, think beginners, it's always best to start off with a pick, but I always encourage people to play with the fingers as well, to get that connection with the instrument. Just to reiterate the point you made before, Jack, that I think is super important is lots of people get overwhelmed when they start trying to learn finger picking because they try to use too many fingers. And when I've sort of gone through it with students, when they first begin playing, I just get them to literally use the thumb and the first finger, and just get used to that kind of alternating pattern of thumb, finger, finger, thumb, finger, and then broaden it out to include the middle finger. Yeah. And exactly as you said, I just tell people to just stick with that for months and months and months, Just get comfortable seeing what you can play with your thumb and your first and middle finger. And you can create some crazy, like really, really intricate, nice patterns just using those three fingers. And then don't worry about introducing your ring finger or your little finger until way, way, way later. I think another thing that, thinking of questions that students always ask me about finger picking, they think there are like set patterns that they need to play. And there are some patterns that work over each chord. But what I'd say is something that maybe a lot of people don't realise is that when you hear somebody finger picking, all they're actually doing 99% of the time is just playing the notes from within that chord. So let's say, for example, the chord sequence was C to G. Do me a favour, Jack, like any timing, just play it, just bounce back and forth between a C and a G as strumming, not as finger picking, please. Strumming. Okay, so what we've got there is chords being presented as blocks. Okay, so now literally make any order you want, any pattern you want, just pick those notes out instead of strumming them all in one block. Nice. So when you were playing there, you were just literally just picking out any note.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
There was no like specific, special pattern you were playing. You were literally just pulling notes out. And I think that's a really important piece of information that most people don't realise is there's no special like secret way, you're literally just picking out, notes from that chord. And there are some notes that work better than others, but none of them will sound bad, And I always encourage people to just play around with it. And just get their fingers moving because it feels so weird to begin with,
Yeah.
Andy, if you had a student that wanted to get started with finger picking, like specifically, what's the first step that you would tell them to do?
There is a sort of very traditional classical pattern, which is just to literally do the open low E and then the open G, the open B, the open high E, like that.
Okay.
So sort of go up and down that pattern.
So we're playing the absolute lowest string here.
Yeah.
And then
the three highest. So.
And then the three highest.
Just nothing else matters. Metallica,
yeah. But what's good about that pattern is if you keep that pattern quite relentless, you can change the chords as long as you've got a root note on the bottom. So you could play like the open 3, which is an E minor.
Yeah.
And then put a G on.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is the picking hand doesn't have to do a lot of thinking. You can just keep that pattern going around. But by bringing like our left hand or the fretting hand in, we can change the sound of it quite a lot just by putting a chord on.
Yeah, because you're basically getting the low end and the high end there on you. It's got a nice dynamic to it, I think, that particular pattern. Okay, I hope you found that useful, guys. It's given you some new things to think about to get you started with finger picking. Fantastic technique, really good one to explore. To get more materials that will help you understand finger picking and get started with finger picking, download the bonus pack for this episode, which you can find at nationalguitaracademy.com. patreon.com/podcast1. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section of the show, which is theory tips. Okay, theory tips is the part of the show where we share some bite-sized music theory tips. Most guitar learners are a bit intimidated by theory, but this is where some of the best breakthroughs come from. Okay, this week we're going to talk about time signatures. Right, we're going to keep this quite brief because we don't want the podcast to get too long. But Andy, give us an overview, mate. What are time signatures?
So a time signature, if you ever look at a normal piece of sheet music or whatever, you'll see usually two numbers at the beginning. And usually you're going to see a 4 on top of another 4. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you might see something like a 3 on top of another 4. And the bottom number, the bottom 4, isn't what we need to worry about so much. It's the top number. And that tells us how many beats we have in a bar.
Okay, it sounds scary. I'm terrified right now. Okay, this is getting really complex.
But the easiest way to explain it is to play it, really. Let's say we were in 4/4. That means we have 4 beats in a bar.
Nice.
So that might sound, on guitar, it might sound like... What you can hear there is every 4 strums, we're getting an emphasis. We're getting suddenly a bolder sounding chord. So we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the beats are coming at us in 4s. Whereas if I strum it like this, what we notice there is we're getting 3s. We're getting an emphasis every 3. So that's in 3/4.
Yeah. So what's the how does this benefit us, Jack? How does understanding a song's time signature, why does it matter?
It's really useful for your rhythm playing. It's kind of like the rhythmic equivalent of what lead guitar is. If you don't know what the time signature is, you're going to really struggle to play a coherent strumming pattern. Same way, if you don't know what the key of a song is, you don't really know what notes to play. It's the rhythmic version of that, really.
Okay, and in my experience, most popular music is in 4 and 4.
Yeah. Most is.
Not all, but most of it is. And I always think it's useful for people to kind of think in 4s, if you know what I mean, in terms of the timing, in terms of the strumming, just in terms of how they count and kind of divide songs up as they're learning. But yeah, I think, understanding time signatures, or at least just being aware of them, is really useful if you're looking at, a musical stave, and you want to see how something's laid out.
Yeah, if you're playing in a group as well, if you're counting in, we want to make sure we count in the right number of beats.
Yeah.
So if everyone's starting at the same time, we want to make sure we all know what beat we're coming in on. So that can be quite helpful.
Perfect. Okay, I hope you found that useful, guys. Just a quick theory tip. To see an example of how time signatures work and how you can recognise them, download the bonus pack for this episode, which you can get at nationalguitaracademy.com/podcast1. And now we're going to move on to the last segment of the show, which is One Last Thing.
One last thing before you go. One last thing before you go.
Okay, One Last Thing is the part of the show where we leave you with a parting gift. So something randomly cool or interesting about music or guitar culture. Jack, what have you been up to this week, mate? Have you got? Do you have a one last thing to share with our audience?
Yeah, so this week I've been practicing. Basically, my girlfriend is a singer, and I've been tasked with the challenge of working out a really intense jazz tune.
Oh, it sounds like you're enjoying that.
You've
been tasked with the challenge.
To be fair, I have been really enjoying it, but it's really difficult. It took me about a month to just work out 1 minute of the song, and my ear is pretty good, so it took me a long time. But yeah,
it must be pretty hardcore because you're an advanced, very accurate player, so that must be pretty tough.
But yeah, I'll give you a quick snippet just to see, so you can hear what I've kind of been doing. So. So just to be clear there,
nice.
I haven't got a secret second guitarist in my pocket playing all the bass lines. That's me.
Very, very... that's pretty brave, actually, Jack, to to play something you're actually learning at the moment on the podcast. Yeah, so all of those weird bass line stuff, it's you need an extra finger or something, don't you, to do them?
Yeah, I do.
Really, really tricky. Andy, what have you been up to this week, mate? Have you got a one last thing that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, over the weekend I went down to London to watch a concert. I watched the Senseless Things, who are a rather good indie rock band from the early 90s.
Nice.
And who have reformed, so that was quite good.
I can see you sporting the hoodie.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so that was...
you went to the merch stand.
Yeah,
good
so
man.
That was a great gig.
Yeah. Very good. And I think my one last thing for this episode would be to encourage people to check out Roger Waters. So Roger Waters was the primary songwriter and the sort of driving force behind Pink Floyd, or behind Pink Floyd's best periods, in my opinion. And his solo stuff is really, really overlooked, and it's so cool. I've just been listening to it a lot lately. So Radio Chaos, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, Amused to Death, they're just brilliant albums. If you're interested in if you like any of Pink Floyd's stuff, those 3 albums are superb, and I've kind of rediscovered them lately and really enjoyed them. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast, guys. Please give us your feedback. This is your show. We've spent quite a long time trying to put it together in a format that works, but I very much see this as something that will evolve as time goes by. We can ditch segments or add different segments. We can make it shorter or longer or whatever. But please give us your feedback so we know what works for you. Please let us know your thoughts on the show by emailing us at podcast@nationalguitaracademy.com. We want to help you, so please let us know what you want to hear. And also let us know what you think works well in the show and what could be better. Lastly, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. 5-star reviews will help the show grow, and they also help other guitar learners find our work. So if you've enjoyed this podcast and you want to help us out, we'd appreciate it enormously if you'd leave us a review. Thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you again next time. For each podcast, we create a bonus pack that expands on what we've discussed in the episode. Each bonus pack includes video lessons, diagrams, chord boxes, and practice materials. Basically, lots of stuff that builds on the things we've discussed in the podcast. To download the bonus pack for this episode, go to nationalguitaracademy.com/podcast1.